Cool. All right. Welcome to the Humans of Grappling podcast. We have Phill Schwartz on here from 10th Planet Portland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for joining. So we got your name from somebody posting on our who should we have on the podcast kind of list, and of course 10th Planet Portland is whatever major city you're in, there's usually a 10th planet, right? That seems to be the case. So what made you decide Portland, and what kind of how did you get up there? Because from what I understand, you started training with Eddie in LA, right?
Yeah, I grew up in LA. I just couldn't stand LA anymore. I was just over LA.
Yeah.
And I went to college in Portland, and so I knew a little bit about Portland, and I couldn't decide if I was going to move to Portland, where I knew people, or if I was going to move to Denver, where I didn't know anybody. But for whatever reason, those two cities at that time were calling to me, and I ended up going with Portland because I had friends there, because I went to college in Portland.
I see.
And then later I went to Denver, and I didn't like Denver, and I was like, oh, good thing I didn't move to Denver.
Right.
So for whatever reason, it was a good thing to move to Portland. And then when I moved back up to Portland, I didn't really have any aspirations of starting a gym, but Nathan Orchard and I started training together, and neither one of us really wanted to open a gym, but together we kind of thought maybe we could do it together. And so that was the beginning of 10th Planet Portland.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, so, I mean, that's surprising because, I like Denver too, and, that's I don't know, it's always beautiful, when I guess I don't go there when it snows, so I don't understand the the pain in the ass of where, how hard it would be living up there, but, yeah, Portland's also a super fun city.
Too. Yeah, no, I like the snow. It's not an anti-snow thing. I don't know.
I see.
I just didn't click with Denver. I just
gotcha.
Didn't click with them.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, cool. So you went to college in Portland. What, where did you go to college, and what did you major in? And all that, the pre-jiu-jitsu life, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, I started jiu-jitsu in my sophomore year of college.
Okay.
So college and jiu-jitsu were tied for a little while.
Gotcha.
But I went to a small liberal arts school called Reed College in Portland. And
gotcha.
Yeah, a really small school. And I studied military history.
Oh, nice.
So I studied a lot of strategy and tactics and games and theory. So that was my focus after I got rid of the idea of going to med school.
Okay. Wow. All right. That's you've had a different track to get to gym ownership, huh? So is that?
Yeah, it wasn't business. I wasn't a business person. Although I've always admired business people, and I've worked for a lot of business people. I've never really was a business person, and then 10th Planet Portland kind of became my first business, and since then I've started a lot of businesses. So now I'm trying to teach other people how to run businesses, and 10 years into running my own.
Right. Oh, that's pretty dope. So would you say do you pull any of the military strategy and tactics or whatever into your business or into jiu-jitsu at all? Do you feel like it prepared you at all?
All the time. I pull that stuff in all the time. My students are probably tired of hearing me tell stories about, Napoleon or whatever, or Genghis Khan. I think that those lessons are out there all the time, and my favorite my life motto is from a Roman general. So it's I definitely incorporate that style into my jiu-jitsu, and I think that jiu-jitsu is kind of a deeply personal expression. It's an art, and I think that a lot of people think that my jiu-jitsu is like this guy's jiu-jitsu. No, your jiu-jitsu is as unique as a fingerprint.
That's true.
And you can definitely see when people have been influenced, but I think that your jiu-jitsu is like as unique as a fingerprint, and so, you know, my jiu-jitsu looks like me, you know, and your jiu-jitsu would look like you.
Right. That's true. Yeah, because everyone has like different body types and different attributes and different gifts that they start off with, and then they have everyone has a different mind. Everyone has a different perspective on
their personality.
Yeah. That's
okay,
true.
here's this is a military thing that I bring up a lot in my teaching and my training. Have you ever heard of the OODA loop?
I've heard of what's the acronym? OODA loop?
Observe, orient, decide, and act.
Oh, okay, gotcha. There's a similar thing sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, that's okay. It's based from Air Force captain's dogfighting mentality, and his idea was that the person or the pilot that creates faster decisions better is the one that's going to win. Not necessarily the one that waits to make the best move, but the one that creates the fastest best move. And so I think we see that a lot in jiu-jitsu, where, you know, you can really students in the beginning are always looking for, well, what's the right move? And it's like, no, who's going to make the next move and keep dictating that pace?
Right. Yeah, like it's because it's a real-time strategy, right? It's like I'm a nerd. I grew up with video games and like Warcraft and Starcraft, and like you have to kind of, it's not turn-based where you get to, like chess or whatever, where you get to like wait and see what the other person is going to do, or you get to think while you make your next move. Stuff's happening all the time, and you have to kind of evaluate what the next best move is while you have incomplete information. So that makes sense. That like military is the ultimate like application of that. Like you've got planes in the air, you're trying to figure out like, okay, what's the next bad guy that I need to shoot down or whatever, right? So yeah, that's interesting. That I mean, this has happened throughout all of human history, and we've just kind of like codified it now. Like we can like study it and look back and understand better what made people win more over time.
Well, like one of the most, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with Miyamoto Musashi.
Yep.
And Musashi's quoted a lot in jiu-jitsu. I think a lot of jiu-jitsu people love Musashi, both because of his mentality and because of the book and because of, you know, his story about martial arts. But, you know, his famous quote is, when you see the way broadly, you see it in all things, you know?
Right.
And so I think that jiu-jitsu is just a microcosm. It's a microcosm of so many other things, you know? And I think that a lot of people say, like, I'm sure you've heard people say, like, well, just because you're a jiu-jitsu black belt doesn't mean you know about world politics, or it doesn't mean that you know about science or medicine or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, like, not technically. I don't know all the same stuff that a scientist would know, but I know what it means to be an expert in one thing, and I know what it means to be logical and reasonable, and I know what it means to like defend my claims and being able to demonstrate, you know, my beliefs. And so in some ways, when you start to see the way, when you become an expert of one thing, it helps you understand experts of all other things, you know? It doesn't make you an expert, but it helps you understand other people's perspectives.
It gives you a framework to start off with. It kind of, you can say, okay, what's the equivalent thing in this other field? Or and you kind of understand the people in that field better too. Like you understand, like, okay, this black belt is this type of person. Like he got to there because he did did 10,000 quote unquote 10,000 hours of like practice, and he was shaped by that experience. Okay, what is that equivalent kind of person in a different field, and what are their incentives? What are their how does their game work? Like in jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of, like, if you play IBJJF, like there's a lot of incentive structure to like play a more conservative points based game. Whereas if you're sub only or ADCC, there's a little bit, you can be a little bit more freewheeling and like attack more. And there's probably similar incentives. Like I had a coach early on, Dave Camarillo. He said, rule set dictates behavior. So it's what are the rules of that field, and that kind of dictates the outcome.
Yeah, I kind of say something similar, like the rules dictate the play, you know, and everyone's always going to game based on whatever the rules are. So one thing I was telling my students recently is like a lot of people, I was like, you know, a lot of you aren't winning the gold medal because you have it in your mind that you only want to win a certain way. Like you're fixated on winning a certain way instead of just winning, you know?
Sure.
And one of the most interesting things that I've found in kind of the study of psychology of like what makes people good is that the best competitors are not the people who love winning the most, but they're the ones who hate losing the most.
Yep.
And
exactly.
I've found that over and over again, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not a great competitor. because I'm a student. I consider myself to be a student of the sport, and it's not that I like losing. I don't like losing, and I try to win every time I compete. But I am able to rationalize a loss as something that is helping me, you know, expose a weakness or a flaw in my game, and therefore help me grow. Whereas some of the guys that I've been in locker rooms with, you know, I mean, that they're actually incredibly accomplished jiu-jitsu people, they don't feel the same way as me. Right. And like you know, like the way that I beat myself up after a loss is like totally magnified in the way that they are after a loss. And I've been in a lot of those locker rooms as a coach and as a competitor, and so you know, it's definitely the mindset. Separates a lot of people, you know, inside of jiu-jitsu with what are you looking for and what are you trying to achieve, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And that's, I've actually talked to my friends about this too. Like some of my good training partners, we've said that you don't have to beat the guy, you just have to win. It's a kind of similar thing where it's like jiu-jitsu people take it so personally. Of like, oh, I want to beat him, or I want to like whatever, I want to strangle him or break him or whatever. It's like, no, you just got to win. Like you just got to like whatever the bounds of the rules are. You can kind of tactic your way into winning. Of course, it may be boring, or like it may not like be the sexiest thing, but like you still get the win over the guy. So. And I do kind of like also think that same way of like the hating losing. I feel like I've used that, like, I mean, it's a common enough term or whatever, but like I feel sort of that same way. It's like the reason I prepare the reason I work out and I do extra conditioning or whatever is like because I don't want to lose. It's not out of a love for winning. It's like, okay, I don't want to gas out. I don't want to look dumb. I want to because like I don't want to look stupid out on the stage in front of everyone. So yeah.
And the bigger the stage, the more pressure that there is.
Exactly.
You know? So
yeah.
You know, guys that like rightfully so, a lot of guys that made it to ADCC, you know, even if you lose your first match at ADCC, like that really sucks, but at the same time, like it's a huge accomplishment just to make it to the main tournament, you know?
For sure.
And, like just to get through the invites and to get through, you know, the trials, like I was excited for every single one of those athletes who got to go out there.
For sure. Yeah, no, you're in the top 16 grapplers in the world. Like that's a very rarefied air. Like that's a it's very hard to be top 16 at anything in the world, right? Like it's not just grappling, but like any field, like we were talking about. So yeah, it sucks. Yeah, because you had to go through whatever all the like I made it to the second day of West Coast trials, and the first day was hard, and I went up against Elder Cruz the first match, second day, and like I made it to like that part of the tournament. It was like, okay, gonna run into somebody, like run into names, and that was like that's like, maybe this is where I was okay with that loss, because I was like, okay, obviously he's one of the best guys in the tournament. Like this is what I came here for, is to like test myself against the best guys. So of course I was like, okay, I want to beat him. Like going into it, I was like, okay, I want to. For whatever reason, I have this like unfounded idea that I can beat him, and I want to test it. It's fuck around and find out, that kind of thing. So
I mean, at West Coast Trials, one of my students had Jay-Z Cavalcante first round, and our strategy was, you know, with Wagner in his corner and everything, like the whole team, the whole Fight Sports squad, you know, and I was like, listen, dude, like this, because it was my guy's a purple belt, and I was like, look, this is the match that you came for. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. You didn't get it in round 2 or round 3 or whatever. Like this is it. This is the match that we're here for. I don't care about the rest of the tournament. I just care about this match. And I was like, your job, and like going back to like what you said about like not having to beat the guy, you just have to win. I was like, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna make this whole match as hard as possible for this guy as possible. And he made him fight to the very. They wrestled and fought the game and fought the strategy all the way to the very end. And Cavalcante had to work his ass off in that match to beat. You know what I mean? And so and like that's a huge win no matter what happens. You know,
for sure.
And something I told another one of my students today, actually. Because they asked me if they should take this opportunity in an upcoming tournament. And I said, look, like, obviously you're shooting for a gold medal, but you have to win bronze before you win silver, before you win gold, you know? Like, a lot of people are stymied by this mentality they have that it's like, it's gold or it's nothing. It's like, it's win or it's, you know, it's like, if you ain't winning, you're losing, you know, like that kind of mentality.
If you ain't first, you're last.
If you ain't first, you're last, you know? I was high when I said that, Rick. So it's like, that mentality is messing up a lot of people, and it's really unhealthy, you know? Like, the much more healthy mentality for competitors is to be like, hey, look, like let's set our sights on bronze, and then silver, and then gold, and then no one in your division can touch you. Then you get promoted, and then you're looking at bronze again. You know what I mean? And like that's a really healthy way to look at it, as opposed to like it's gold or I'm a piece of shit. You know?
Yeah, and that's you have to work your way up, and you have to, especially like you have whatever. I'm sure you have a ton of students who want to compete and all that, and they're at the white belt, blue belt level, and they don't know where they're at. They want to first see like, okay, where am I at in this weight division, or weight and belt division and age division. Like there's whatever, a lot of different ways to slice it in jiu-jitsu, and you can kind of get caught up in like not knowing where you're at precisely until you do compete, or you go to a different gym and you kind of are able to compare how you do normally in the roles at your home gym versus like where you go travel and go against some other teams like equivalent belts. So
that's actually an interesting phenomenon, because it can go both ways. On the one hand, when you travel, you encounter people that know nothing about your game. So unlike your training partners that you see every day, they don't know anything about your game. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like, and this even happens to me as a black belt. Like, I'll go to a gym out of town, not necessarily even 10th Planet gym, just any gym, because I go into like random gi gyms and drop in like a random traveler. And like sometimes you'll walk in and you'll start rolling with somebody, and, you know, they're giving you, like, a really good roll, really hard roll, you know? And then later, like, after the roll's over, they're like, oh, shit, like, what's your rank? And you're like, oh, you're a black belt, okay. And then, like, the next time you roll with them, they're almost, like, defeated already. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally different roll. Whereas, so, like, something I tell my students all the time, like, okay, again, because it's no gi, so you don't always know who you're rolling with. But I've seen the same thing. I've seen my purple belts give really tough rolls to black belts because they don't know they're rolling with a black belt. They just know they're rolling with a guy and they don't know anything about this person, so they're just going to like treat it like they want to win. Whereas if they know they're rolling with a black belt, they think, oh my God, this guy's going to crush me. I got to be safe. I got to be conservative. I got to, you know, whatever, or be respectful or dial it back or whatever.
Sure.
So it's really interesting. So sometimes amnesia is the best thing you can do. Like, forget what you know about this guy and just go fight him like he's anybody you want to tap, you know?
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of, I mean, that's the mentality I had to go into at trials, because it's so, like, because everyone's for lack of a, like, everyone's at the highest level. Like, it doesn't matter what belt you are. It's like every person is going to be your toughest opponent. So, because everyone thinks they're the best. Like you don't enter a tournament thinking you're the worst. Like you don't enter the tournament thinking you're gonna be 32 out of 32. Like you enter a tournament thinking you're gonna, like, whatever, win. So I think that's,
otherwise what are you doing there?
Yeah, exactly. So
like something I tell my students is, like, one of the most toxic tournament mentalities is, I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah.
You ever hear someone say that? Well, what are you doing this weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, let's see what happens. I'll see what happens, you know?
Right.
That's one of the worst. You know what I mean? It's like, you're either there with a game plan to impose your will, or you're not, or why are you competing? You know?
Sure. Yeah.
It's a really weird thing where people want to see what happens, or they tell themselves, like, I'm just here to have fun. And it's like, I'm not, and I love competing. I'm not saying that a tournament can't be fun.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that, like, you're not there for that. You're there to try and win, and not because winning is so great. It's because giving your all is what it's all about. And if you don't give your all, if you hold back, or if you let some sort of fear drive you, then you're really not getting the experience that you're actually going after.
Yeah. I think that is an interesting way to look at it, and I think it resonates with me, is that I want to, not that I was expecting to, like, I don't know, it's this unfounded, like, I want to test, I want to see where I'm at, but also, like, I feel really good, and I feel like there's this almost like Gordon Ryan talks about this in his mentality, like, course, where it's like, why not think you're the best? Like, it's not gonna, like, detract from you. Like, as long as you're still preparing, as if, like, you are doing, like, you are going through all your normal, like, training, all that kind of stuff. Like, it only gives you a mental edge if you think you're the best one in the tournament.
Do you think that there is something? Do you think that there's actually something such as like playing better because you know your opponent is good versus playing poorly because you think your opponent is bad?
Yeah, you definitely, like, there's rising to the occasion, I feel like.
Right,
and
rising to the occasion.
I definitely felt that at trials. It was like I knew I had to be at the top of my game, and that's I think that's where I wanted to go with my previous points. Like, it forces you to be the best that you can be, and that everyone is, like, meeting at this place at a certain place and a certain time, and we're going to see who's the best at this point in time. And everyone is preparing for this months in advance. Everyone's thinking about this. I think that's the value behind tournaments, is that there's dudes out there that you don't know who are going to be your opponent, like, months later, and everyone's, like, doing everything they can to prepare, and it's a human, like, catalyst for like progress, because if it forces you to want to be the best and peak at this point in time. So I don't know. What do you feel? When you coach your students, like, for tournaments and things like that, do you go through, like, some sort of, like, progression towards the tournament, or is it just kind of like, oh, a tournament's coming up, and it's I'm sure it depends per tournament, maybe.
Yeah, I have students all the time that are getting ready for
Yeah.
different sets, different rule sets.
Yeah.
But overall, as a team, we have goals that are long-term goals, and we have goals that are short-term goals.
Sure.
I think that's something that a lot of people aren't doing that they need to be doing. You know,
Sure.
I think people, especially coaches, you know, I think that, and I only say this because I know I've been guilty of this. So obviously I wouldn't accuse coaches of doing something that I haven't done also in
Sure.
the past.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you take your students, 15, 20 students to a local competition. Maybe it's a lot of white and blue belts, and you know, you're ready to eat your hat at the end of the day because you've been working for 6 hours. And you watch 12 guys who couldn't escape closed guard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so the only thing you can do is you go back to class on Monday and you start ranting about how we're going to be passing closed guard and we're going to do this till every single one of you motherfuckers can pass closed guard. And you know what I mean? And then you drill it for a week or 2 weeks. And then, you know, guys are like, okay, whatever. And then you get bored of it and you move on, you know? But you might find that 6 months from now, guys still can't pass closed guard, and you're like, well, what the hell, you know? You know, we drilled it for 7 days 6 months ago. Why can't people pass guard? You know,
Right.
And so we have goals that are overarching goals, but something that I've found for myself and also for students is that competition is programming. And it is a reflection of probably the past 6 months, but really the past 3 months of your training. So I think that, you know, whichever one of your swords or blades is sharper are the ones that you're going to find expressed, right? And so, you know, like, we see a lot of teams, like not just Danaher, not just Craig Jones, B Team, not just 10th Planet, not just Autos, not just Gracie Baja, but like so many teams, when it comes to competition, they kind of come up with a team game plan that everybody drills. And there's sort of some continuity inside of, oh yeah, we're all going to get good at these things, and we're going to drill the hell out of them, and then that's what we're going to hopefully see expressed in the tournament, you know? So I think that as a coach, you have to set goals that are longer than 1 week, 2 weeks, and you have to say, like, okay, I'm looking for my entire squad to be able to do the following things, you know? And so I have a list like that in my head right now of things that we're working on long term to make sure that our guys are, you know, able to emphasize the, you know, certain points. And, you know, and I'm sure every coach has that list in their head.
Right. Yeah. So, and that, I mean, competition or not, like, there's a curriculum that drives your, like, what you want to teach. And it's good to have, like, that direction that you're trying to go. And I mean, and every gym has its own, like, style. Like 10th Planet Las Vegas, we're gonna mount you, we're gonna head and arm choke you, like that's Casey style, and like that's what he teaches. And everyone more or less has a head and arm choke. And
the best way to find out. Sorry, the best way to find out what the black belt at a gym is good at is roll with one of the blue belts, because they're all going to try to do the thing like you just said. Like if I roll with a blue belt at your gym, he's going to try and head and arm choke me, and I'm going to be like, oh, watch out for Casey's head and arm choke. So whenever you go to a new gym, like I swear I was at a camp in Costa Rica with some of the guys from Brandon McCaffrey's gym in Alabama, and I was like, I told the guy before we rolled, I was like, listen, I won't be mad if you try to punch choke me because I expect it. And he was like, oh, how'd you know? How'd you know? I know your teacher very well. So I know what you're coming at me with, you know? So yeah, I think that's natural.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So do you have and like Eddie tries to do this at like the whatever affiliation level of like having the warm-ups and like where this is the curriculum that he wants to like persist in the 10th Planet like lore. Some people train them, some people don't. But at least they're kind of out there. It's like this is the official like 10th Planet curriculum for whatever affiliation should like at least try to do.
Eddie's actually super cool about it because he said recently that the warm-ups just represent what he thinks is valuable, and that he invites any 10th Planet moon to come up with their own set of techniques or their own set of drills that they think are valuable. You know?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it's less dogmatic of like Eddie saying you have to do the warm-ups. It's more like Eddie saying, listen, I've been in jiu-jitsu for 30-something years, right? And I know a little bit about it, and I've thought a little bit about it, and here are some of the thoughts that I've had about what's really important, and and so there's a lot of value there in the warm-ups.
Right.
I think warm-ups is kind of a misnomer because I think that people hear the warm-ups and they think like shrimping, cartwheels, forward rolls,
Yeah.
I think what is really in the warm-ups, in the 10th Planet warm-ups, as Eddie calls them, is, it's like a hieroglyph or like a Rosetta Stone of all of what Eddie is in Eddie's brain in terms of the value of the moves.
Exactly.
So there's a ton of value there, but he's also invited everyone to write their own versions of it that they think is meaningful. So that's cool.
That's cool. I haven't heard that side of it. I've only like my impression of the warm-ups is that it's out there and like you have to know it before you go to downtown LA, before you take a class with Eddie, and you have to. There's a lot of, I don't know, for students who don't train the warm-ups too often like that. There's a lot of anxiety around it or whatever. But
you shouldn't. Don't feel anxiety. Just go in. Yeah. Eddie just wants guys to come in anyways. He loves it when people come to visit.
I see.
So he's much more focused on the rolls and the live drills than whether or not you've mastered the warm-ups before you come to HQ.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. But yeah, that's cool that he's like given that idea out and like has said, hey, look, anybody can kind of come up with their own, like, I mean, it's a formalized idea of like, okay, have your own curriculum of like, okay, what are the things that your moon values, and like, I don't know, for at least for 10th Planet Las Vegas, it's the mount and side chokes. I don't know what you guys are known for or whatever. Like, what are some things that you try to instill in your students?
Oh man, it's funny because I feel like we've next year in May 23 we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary of 10th Planet.
Awesome.
So we've had a lot of different cycles and a lot of different things we've been known for. I myself lean more towards leg locks in the beginning. Nathan Orchard obviously leaned towards rubber guard, a lot of rubber guard. So I think we were known for that for a long time. But recently we've been playing a much more ADCC style game, a lot of wrestling, a lot of mount, a lot of side, a lot of turtle, a lot of back attacks, a lot of BBI overtime. Still leg locks, still a lot of good stuff. But I think like we've been really putting a lot of emphasis in my students into mount and back control, and making sure that guys are really positionally strong. And so that's and wrestling. Like wrestling is something that as a school we've emphasized from the very beginning that a lot of schools didn't emphasize.
For sure.
And I think more are getting on board with that now. There's a lot more. I'm sure you've noticed this too. There's a ton of wrestlers crossing over into jiu-jitsu right now.
Definitely.
Kids that wrestled when they were young, when they were in high school, some of them when they were in college, and they get out of wrestling and there's nothing for them. There's very few wrestling clubs. There's very few places to go. And so they lose all that community, and they lose that connection, and they lose having a coach, and they lose having a team, and they lose going to meets on the weekends and all that kind of stuff. And so to all those guys out there that are missing that, whether you played baseball or whether you did wrestling, like I say, come try jiu-jitsu. Like you're gonna find a team, you're going to find a family, you're going to find a coach, you're going to find like a place to go that's not your work, that's not your house, you know, where you can blow off steam, and it's not the bar either, so it's like a healthy place to go.
Yeah.
So for me, jiu-jitsu's been all those things, you know.
Yeah, that definitely, and that's why I started jiu-jitsu. Is I was that wrestler in high school, and there was nothing in college. Like I didn't wrestle in college or anything like that. I was just done after high school. I was like, oh, there's no clubs or there's no like adults like wrestling, and
Right.
Yeah, I started jiu-jitsu because I had always heard from my friends that it would be something that I'd be interested in, but I don't know. I started off thinking, oh, that's too barbaric for whatever reason, like joint locks or whatever. It was too, or strangling was out of the realm of what I would be comfortable with. But eventually, it was like, yeah, it's still the same game. It's just expanded, and I think that's a super key point for what you just brought up. I mean, you've owned your own gym for 10 years, so you're really good at these selling points. But like the having a coach, I think that's, people don't like, they have a coach in high school and they have this kind of like figure who's like investing in them, and then they lose that. Like their boss of their job isn't a coach. Their boss at their coworkers or anything aren't coaches. Like people lose that like position in their lives. And I think that's super key, super valuable to have somebody who's like, who wants the best for you and is willing to like help guide you to get there.
And like in high school for me, sometimes I didn't have good relationships with my coaches, and it wasn't till later when I wasn't even on their teams that I looked back and I was like, man, I wish I had dedicated myself more. I wish I had pushed myself. I wish I had showed up more. And I really respect that guy. I really respect that coach. And some of the coaches that were the hardest on you are the ones that you end up respecting the most, you know, and that really, really caring about. And the ones that are just kind of patting you on the back, you're like, you know, you don't feel the same way, you know. And in jiu-jitsu, like, we're here for you. Like, we're not going anywhere, you know. And, like, you're not going to graduate in 4 years or 3 years. So you get to actually have, like, a really long bond. And I've promoted some guys to black belt now that have been with me since the very beginning, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
And like guys that I've known, you know, guys I've known for a long time, and that have been dedicated for a long time. And it's really cool to have that relationship and to watch that grow. I mean, obviously, the vast majority of students that walk into a gym will end up quitting or moving on prior to getting their black belts, but the ones that do stick around, like, it becomes a really cool core group of individuals.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting to, like, because nowhere else in adult life do we have that. Do you have, like, the same friends you show up, you willingly, this is a volunteer activity, like, you're voluntarily showing up to this place and strangling each other 5 nights a week for 10 years. Like that, that's like, it's a very strange crowd that whoever's left at the end of that, like you've gone through some things with each other. And yeah, I think that creates, a very strong sense of community that, I mean, of course, like us, I'm speaking to the choir, preaching to the choir here that jiu-jitsu is a good thing for community. It's like, no duh, but that's not you don't exactly lead with that, with jiu-jitsu, like with marketing jiu-jitsu to like new people, right? Like,
well, that's true, except that my business model is jiu-jitsu gym as community center.
I see.
So I don't think that a lot of people think about it that way.
Sure.
But that is the way that I think about it. And
sure.
I don't see why a jiu-jitsu gym as a group or an association or even as an individual gym, I don't see why they can't provide many of the same services that a community center would provide in expanding ways. And like, I don't know, like maybe I'm thinking too big, but I went to take my son to swim lessons the other day at the local community center, and they have a big basketball gym, and they have a pool, and they have a pottery studio, and they have all this stuff. And I was thinking, man, well, why can't we have all this stuff and a jiu-jitsu gym? You know, like,
sure.
Why can't we provide more and more for the benefit of our members, on top of just having an awesome jiu-jitsu program? Because I've had people in the past, like, who really stopped kind of being into the jiu-jitsu, but were like, I just don't want to leave this group of people. Like, can I please keep coming and keep showing up? And, like, will you just let me, like, sweep the floor or something? Like, I just want to hang out with this group of people. And I was like, of course. Like, we're not excommunicating you from the community, even if you decide that jiu-jitsu is not your thing, you know?
Right, yeah, because it's, very positive, like, positive upward spiral kind of thing. Like, everyone's, like, there wanting to get better. And I think I've visited 10th Planet Portland before, and you guys have, like, a weight area, too, like, weightlifting, and I think I've been to, like, one of the 6 a.m. there. I train 6 a.m. at 10th Planet Las Vegas, so it's always nice when a gym, like, has a 6 a.m. program, because, like, everyone who's showing up there really wants to be there. Like, it takes a lot to, like, you're waking up early and having to, like, whatever. You might be losing a little bit of sleep, whatever. But, like, everyone who shows up at 6 a.m. like really wants to be there. So it's it's interesting to see when gyms, like, go outside of that, the just jiu-jitsu, but they have, like, CrossFit area, or a I don't know, like this gym in the Bay Area, Guardian Gym, has, like, a kids, like, a full-on, like, kids program where it's a nonprofit, and they have, like, homework time for kids, and they expand, like, like you said, like, into more community center type of place where it's a safe place for kids to stay after school and, like, interact with each other and get their homework done, and have an activity, a place to go after school. And I think that's super huge. That's super important to, like, help build communities over a long period of time.
I need more space.
Yeah.
I need a bigger warehouse, but real estate's expensive right now.
Right, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, like, that. I don't think that I don't think every gym owner feels the same way about that, and I think that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, I think that there's a lot of gyms that maybe think that their mission is to create the next Gordon Ryan, and I think that's fine. But I think that there's a lot of your members are going to get left along the road to finding the next Gordon Ryan. You know.
Sure.
And they may not feel that great about that. So, while you're looking for the next Gordon Ryan, what if you make it a pretty cool environment for people who don't ever want to do that in their lives? You know?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's dope. Like, because it's hard to, for as much as we, like, focus on the competitions and the winning and whatever, the gold medals, we're the vast majority of people, aren't going to do that. And they're still full members of the gym. Like, everyone's the same. Like, everyone's paying the same membership, and everyone wants to be there just the same amount. So how do you make something that attracts more of the hobbyist type and keeps them around? Because that's improving their lives just as much as the world champion type of person is too. So
right. I mean, it's like, you know, how many casual hobbyist runner, joggers, marathon runners are there, and then how many people get to win an Olympic gold medal in marathon or be Usain Bolt or something? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it goes back to what you were saying about being in the top 16 in the world, like, in anything, you know?
Yeah.
And that's not a reason. If you can't go to the Olympics, that's not a reason to quit your running club, you know?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. That's because it's still good for you. It's I think jiu-jitsu has, this might be a plus and minus. Is, like, what attracted to me to jiu-jitsu was I was a wrestler, so I like grappling. But it also has low barrier to entry, or, like, low not barrier to entry, low gatekeeping. Like anybody can enter in ADCC trials or the World Championship and fuck around and find out. Like that's like anybody can, like, if you there is no like NFL, there is no like whatever, you have to be this level of professional to get in. Like if you work hard enough and like enter into the right tournaments, start winning in the right places, like you can like enter into these these tournaments and face the top guys. And that's the weirdest thing with jiu-jitsu. And we kind of conflate, because everyone kind of sees themselves like doing the same thing. Everyone's on the same mat, everyone's doing the same training, but sometimes, hobbyists like get caught up or feel bad if they're not the next Gordon Ryan, maybe.
Sure, and it goes back to, kind of the analogy that I use is like, how do you climb Mount Everest? And it's not by looking up at the peak, you know what I mean? It's by putting one foot in front of the other,
Sure.
So as cliche as that might be, it's like a lot of people are worried about their next belt or their next promotion or their next tournament or whatever, and it's like, hey, just keep making those small steps of progress forward, and like if you stay dedicated, you're gonna be amazed at where you end up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for like 10 years, and I'm still like, I'm from where I started to where I am now. I'm like, it's crazy that whatever. Like I was inconsistent for a little, whatever, in the middle there, but it's wild. If I told myself, back when I was a white belt, hey, you're going to be going up against some of the best guys in the world, and you'll be able to just enter in this tournament and do that, I'd be like, that's wild, like that. And jiu-jitsu is a small enough sport where that's possible still, and I think that's the weird thing about it.
That's true. I mean, when I walked into Eddie's gym for the first time in 2007, and I had no idea where I was going to end up.
Sure.
You know? Yeah. And I'm sure that, and what's really crazy is how many people more talented than me quit along the way to me, and you know what I mean? And I think that happens all the time. It's like, we see these guys with like massive talent that they just can't keep up on the consistency. And then little unathletic nerdy people like me end up becoming black belts, and it's inexplicable,
Yeah, there's certain guys that I see like with high potential. I'm like, you're not allowed to quit, like no matter what. Like we don't want to give you your blue belt because then you'll quit.
Right, exactly. So, like yeah. I mean, look at Derek Rayfield. Yeah. He's still competing. I know. I'm saying he's one of those people with massive potential that didn't quit. Yeah. Look at him.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and he's still out there competing at some of the highest levels, and he's only 21. So he's got that's the scary thing. He's got another 10 years until he's where I'm at now. And like I'm 31, so it's like he can put on another 10 years of like man strength, and
he if anything, he needs to slow down and just take care of himself. You know what I mean? Sometimes I remember, because I've rolled with him since he was a little kid. Yeah, and he was always that person who was so flexible and inverting and throwing themselves into crazy positions, and he's gonna have to take care of that body for the next 10 years.
For sure, yeah. So I think, I didn't see this at the time, or maybe now, now that, there's at some point you're around enough to, understand, whatever, okay. Like Musashi, you see it one way, you see it in all ways. You see the road already. Like we're further down the road than like white and blue belts, and we can kind of gauge. Okay, this guy has a lot of potential, but hey, this is a whatever. There's a lot of work to be done to realize that potential. So I guess what are things that you what are the the things you coach your early students on, or like what are, like, I guess, of course, consistency, whatever, but like, what is there anything that you tell them specifically to make them stay around?
It's interesting. One thing that I tell them in the very beginning is that it might feel like there's so many moves to learn, but there actually aren't that many moves. There's fewer moves than what it appears.
Sure.
And more moves are more similar than they think. And so, like, you know, I tell people, like, you know, there's 5 ways to break the arm. There's 5 ways to break the leg. Jiu-Jitsu is a study of physics and anatomy and some psychology, you know. And so our physical body is not unlimited, and therefore the amount of moves that are not unlimited. Like, we're kind of like G.I. Joes, you know. Like, we kind of bend in certain ways, and like, you know, you can break the arm off a G.I. Joe if you bend it the way it's not supposed to go, and like, we're kind of like that, you know.
Right.
And so I think that kind of letting people know from the very beginning, this is a study in depth of your body and how your body moves and how it doesn't move.
Sure. Right.
And so you already kind of know a lot about that, right?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind as we kind of go forward. We're going to show you the weaknesses and the strengths of your body. We're going to show you how mechanical leverage works, how fulcrums work, how levers work, how cranks work. You know, I mean, we're going to teach you a little bit about mechanics. And you know, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself along the way. You know? Something that we're doing right now at my gym is every 6 months, we give every single student a free 30-minute goal-setting session with a coach.
Oh, wow.
This is the first year that we've done that. I don't know if there's any other gym in the world that's doing that. It's something that we're trying out.
That's awesome.
I'm a believer that goals will help with longevity in the sport.
Sure.
And that a lot of people, again, they have their goals set up here when it should really be down here, and then kind of progressively moved up to where they want it to be. And so meeting with a coach for 30 minutes twice a year, every single student, and I pay my coaches to do these meetings.
Wow.
So my coaches get paid for the hour that they spend with the student.
Sure.
And yeah, we're going to see how that works out.
That's awesome. Like, I've never heard that before. Like, it's always like an informal, like, if you catch your coach after practice or whatever, hey, like, can I pick your brain about whatever? But yeah, that's having that, like, program, like that is part of this culture of this gym. That is what you get by paying your tuition membership. Yeah, that's huge for retention. Like, probably, like, that's the biggest thing, right? Is like people quit after blue belt or before that, they get hurt and they whatever don't want to show up, or so yeah, I'm sure that's I'm sure that'll pay dividends for you guys.
Yeah, we're enjoying it so far. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool also just to really get one-on-one time with students and really kind of hear again, like, why are they engaged in jiu-jitsu right now?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
Because time and time again, I've heard students say, you know, hey, the reason why I joined jiu-jitsu is no longer the reason why I want to do it. And then sometimes you ask them, well, okay, well, what's the new reason? And they're like, I don't know. I don't know. But I don't think I can quit. But why am I doing this? Because I started for this reason, and now I don't feel the same way.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, there can be a lot of that. And you can get ahead of that as a coach with students and talking to them, setting new goals. And then, you know, and the students have interesting lives and interesting stories. So it's always interesting to connect with people and see. My problem with the sessions is they're supposed to be 30 minutes. I let them run till like an hour. So I just keep letting the time run. But we have no limitations, like, from our coaches with talking after class, and students at our gym are always asking us questions, and we're always trying to be a resource to them. So
that's cool. That's great. And yeah, that's ultimately, like, it's a, like, you change people's lives, like, one-to-one. Like, the things that we can realistically do and, like, impact people's lives are, like, one-to-one. no matter like how much technology we try to do, or like however much, like we're not Zuck. We don't own a platform. We don't own, like, the platform is the gym. Like
right.
That's the thing that you have created, or you have you're setting the culture from the top. And it sounds like you have a very like caring, positive culture if you're doing this like as part of their tuition. So
yeah,
that's awesome. I think that's probably gonna be like even just, I don't know. Do you guys talk like just jiu-jitsu goals, or like life goals too, or
everything?
Everything.
I'll talk about anything. They want to get back with their ex-girlfriend.
Right.
They want to lose 10 pounds. They want to master the Americana. Like, whatever it is, I'll talk to them about it.
That's cool. Awesome. Sweet. Anything you want to plug before we wrap it up?
The only thing I want to plug is our summer camps. I shouldn't call them summer camps because they're going to be all year long. Cool. In Nogi Summit, at Nogi Summit. We do them. We've actually done one at 10th Planet Las Vegas in the past. This year, our first camp is on sale right now. It's a snowboarding and jiu-jitsu camp in Big Fork, Montana.
Oh, dope.
It's about 50% sold out, so if you want to go snowboarding with us in January on some awesome snow with some great jiu-jitsu seminars, that one's on sale. We're going to have a women's only camp in March. We're going to go back to Thailand in April. We might do an East Coast camp. We're going to do our Portland camp in the summertime with some big names. And then, who knows, we might even do a Europe camp. So check out and follow at Nogi Summit on Instagram.
Sweet.
And 10th Planet Portland, of course.
Cool. Great. Well, thanks for joining, Phill. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Awesome. Thank you. See you.